Hello, good morning. And there it is, the meeting minutes in the chat. So we've got Nikhil and Anita, Samir, Gaurav, Yash, Vishal, Cynthia. Good. Well, welcome everybody. I'm well, this is the second time in a row, I think. I'm slightly tardy. So there needs to be some sort of public shaming for this kind of a thing. That, or we need for Nikhil to start to finally run the call. What's that, Nikhil? That'd be great. Nikhil, that would be great. Next time? Okay. Good. Perfect.
No, no,
I
I'm not.
really
That's not a yes.
wait, say it again.
I'm saying that's not an yes.
Oh,
So not
okay.
sure.
Oh, I thought I heard you say, okay. All right. Okay. All right. Fair enough. So, well, if you can't hear the rooster, he says welcome as well. So it's 7:30 in the morning for me. And I think I'm the only one on the call that it's appropriate to say good morning to. So most people know that I'm incapable of anything else. So it's May 3rd. This is our first. Is this our? Yeah, this is our first meeting of the month. So nice, good. There's a few different things to discuss. Austin, could you do me a favor and ping Abhishek? Ask him to join today, if you would. And then for Samir and Gaurav, welcome. It's your lucky day. You're the
Alright,
winners. Yeah, and so I think I don't know if that was Samir or Gaurav, but you guys, I think Samir, you're about to do what I was going to ask, which is, please introduce if you would. Say hi. It's nice to have you.
Uh, hi everybody. So this is my first meeting before the newcomer meeting. So it would be my pleasure to learn something. So I have just started. So yeah, looking forward to contribute something. And by profession, I'm a DevOps engineer, and I have been working with the ISTO for some time. So we have a few implementation in Azure now. So that is where I was looking into how to effectively use our ISTO, because there are few performances we have felt like miserable with that. So and debugging those things led me to layer 5. So for the performances and anything, so that is where it grabbed my attention, and now I'm looking forward to learn something and also contribute wherever possible. So
Samir, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Well, we have a conversation or two to have about some of your learnings or some things that you've seen. Also, to ask for your input and opinion about some of the new features that are coming for performance management.
yes.
And it'd be nice to have you be critical of them. Have you, um, give feedback with your DevOps hat on, with your user hat on.
Yeah,
And
the important thing which we felt is a critical thing we could not identify is, so how much time does it really takes from a endpoint in order to reach to any virtual services and passing through the gateway. So that is we could not identify in our Kiali, or you say all other monitoring which we had. So
yeah, let me replay that back to you if I could. The specific item that you've yet to be able to identify is the time that the latency, the time that it takes. Were you looking for the overhead of the service mesh, like of the individual proxies,
yes.
as okay?
So exactly how the envoy proxy is behaving. So how much time does it take to pass from one service to another service? So that is something which we were interested in, because the application which we are running is a very like though it has a CDN in front of it, but it needs to have very like you can say P99 would be less than 5 milliseconds. So
No, geez. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. And well, you know what? I'm going to hold off on some additional questions because I think I could talk to you about it for a little while. Yeah,
yeah,
that's intriguing. That's great. And then Samir, I guess on the other hand, as you're, or rather with your other hat on, as we do look at that specific use case and we do look at some of the features of Meshery, well, you might be one of the people to be help build that out or help try to answer that very question. So
yeah,
this is great. Yes.
yeah. I can probably test the product on our production server because we are.
That's fantastic. It will be like water on parched soil. I mean, it'll be very refreshing. We get some user feedback, but we don't often go deep. And so just as you hang out here, the longer you hang out, the deeper we'll get to go. So it'll be nice. I'll warn you. You know what? This is I just we've known each other for 3 minutes or however long it's been. I will say, fair warning: if you hang out long enough,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I would,
I'll
because this is something which is interesting for me.
I'll you might end up on speaking on a stage somewhere with me because there's some learnings that we need to publish. There's some things that we need to there's some specifics that we need to get out there. And so
Yeah, sure.
yeah, good. By the way, Samir, so the rooster that we have, he clearly thinks it's the morning time zone, but that's what I was going to ask you is what time zone are you in?
I'm from India, so uh, basically it is 6 o'clock in the evening.
Nice. Okay, very good. Very good. Good, good. Yeah, I'm the only one silly enough to get up this early. I think everyone else it's later. So cool. Wow, Samir, nice to have you. This is good.
Thank you.
And Gaurav, Mr. Chara,
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm audible properly.
you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me introduce myself first. So I'm Gaurav Chada. I'm from India. So currently pursuing BTech, second year undergraduate from Dell Technical Campus. So I have a decent amount of experience in front end development and UX UI designing. So and I'm also contributing to the Layer 5 and the Meshery. So looking forward to contribute more and learn more skills from them.
Gaurav. I think Josh will probably is Josh on the phone? I know Josh is. Oh, okay. Nikhil, I wonder if we'll
No,
have
Josh
Josh.
is also. Oh,
Oh,
he, I should say him.
oh, thank you. Thank you, Austin. Anyway, so Josh Patel, he's often quite vocal on these calls. He's usually engaged in a number of initiatives, and I bring up Josh because, well, he had just gotten done. My goodness, I think he just had a blog post made about him. I'm going to check because it may or may not have actually. Cynthia, I don't know if you're or if it's Lizette that's working on publishing his blog post. Oh, speaking of Lizette, she's coming on. So anyway, in Josh's blog post, he says something like, it was nice to be welcomed into the community. And as soon as Josh had said that he knows React, Lee jumped all over him. So he says something to that effect. And the reason that happens is because there are lots of back end nerds here, if you will, and only so many adept with front end, and so they tend to get clobbered. So Gaurav, prepare. You've been warned. So
Yeah.
cool. So, but second year this year, so you're about to be pre-final year in just a little bit?
Yes, I'm about to finish my second year, so I'll be entering my pre-final year, like in a month or two.
Nice. Nice. Very good. Okay. Assuming that COVID lets anything happen, I suppose.
I have some questions about like UX UI designing part. So like, are we currently now modifying or like creating some new UIs for this layer 5?
We are. Oh, what a great question.
I would love to contribute to that part too.
Nice. Okay. Good. I'm taking note. Anything. All right, fair enough. So good. So Samir and Gaurav, you guys have gone through initiation, sort of the traditional heckling and getting to know you, which is nice. By the way, just to help you get to know everyone else, there's 10 to 15 people on the call. Some folks, Blossom, Cynthia, and Lizette or Elizabeth, have just gotten done going through an open source internship or mentoring program. Anita, who's on the call, had helped steward portions of those initiatives. And so we're thankful to have some folks who are in the middle time zone between where I am and where I think most of the rest of the folks on the call are. So Aditya, Abhishek. Oh, I skipped over Austin, who's in that same time zone. Anyway, all of the folks that are on the call, well, not all of them focus only on UI. I'll point out Nikhil because I think it's been pointed out any number of times before. He's been around these parts for a real long time, and so is just an excellent source of information and knowledge about the projects, how they're written, some of their history, why they're doing what they're doing, what part of the goals that, like, on the softer side of like, why are we doing this thing? He has some of those answers as well. And so, yeah, so he's a good individual to keep on your speed dial. One other thing, and just these last, a couple of last points of order. So one, we record these meetings. It's unreal to think that anyone wants to hear some of the jokes that go on the calls later, but they do. And those meetings go up on YouTube. So they'll be there. We end up, we have a small, another tradition, and that is if you don't write down your last name in the meeting minutes, it's fair game to make up a nice last name for you. And so, you've been warned. Okay, we got some topics lined up. Anyone's welcome to put topics onto any of the meetings. You're all welcome to any of the meetings. They're all available. Actually, Anita, this might be something, this is another item that I don't know that we've disseminated very well. That would be my fault. But there's this nice memorable reference for what meetings are going on, what the calendar is. And so it's meet.layer5.io. It just redirects to the community calendar. And then it has links to, all the convenient links and stuff. So these are the rest of the meetings, but Anita, we might do well to list this URL in the handbook or some other places. So side note.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So I think, so Gaurav, great question. It will be answered actually implicitly as we go through. Oops. I'm going to put it down here. And if your question isn't answered by the time we're done, then let's hit it specifically. So let's hit a couple of smaller items first so that we can get these out of the way, because I think we're going to talk a lot about Learn Layer 5 today, probably. So in Meshery, the project has a user interface. It it has the following technologies in the UI. So React, Next.js, Material UI, Billboard.js, which is a charting library, Chart.js, which is also a charting library, Cytoscape.js, and I think that's it. And GraphQL and REST and things like that. So we don't have a specific topic to cover on Meshtree's UI today. Rather, there are some upcoming new features that need to be created within that UI. So Gaurav, this is in part an answer to your question. Gaurav, did you see a ping from me by chance in Slack about a new UI in Meshree for filters?
Yeah, about that, I think I have seen.
Nice. That's something for us to talk about to see if that strikes your fancy. So I'll message you after the fact, just because.
Okay.
Okay. All right, then there's another one that's relatively quick. Let's put this one up here. So there's a new web property to come out shortly. Most of you are aware, but it's called Discuss. It's a subdomain of Layer5. It's discuss.layer5.io. And it's intended to be, it's just an instance of discourse. So no doubt you've all seen or participated in discourse forums in the past. And so this is just an instance of discourse running over here. There's, by the way, some DevOps things to do here. Some of that we're going to ask Abhishek about. But as a community, we're trying to style it to look and feel as much like the main site as possible. And I think there's some undone items here just yet. We're getting close. Like this color is probably off. It's not what we want exactly, but we're getting close. So Abhishek, I don't think Josh is on, but Abhishek, do you want to, last time we met, it was in discussion of a production deployment, because this is just a sandbox. And so do you want to talk?
So basically, right now, Disperse is currently running in a single VM, and it's a Docker container inside a VM, which basically has Redis, Postgres, and all the components, all the supporting components running from inside the Docker container. In the production deployment, we are aiming on getting all these independent components outside so that the setup is a little bit scalable. In order to do that, um, yeah, um, can you open the? Uh, I'll send a link probably in the chat where we've put the design specifications, basically the exact resources that we would have as independent components. And basically, it's that we are stripping out Postgres, Redis. These are the two main components that needs to be deployed as a separate entity and to be kept separate from the discourse application itself. Um, and apart from that, um, there is another step involved in this process, which is to set up SSL, and that is to be taken. That is basically being set up by a software called Let's Encrypt, from which we generate a key value pair of our own to establish the SSL connection.
Okay. And so, by the way, the plan for the cache in production, I wonder if we're in need of Elasticache just yet. I wonder if that isn't more expensive than we.
We can run our own Redis server that would also suffice. but it's being extensively used by Discourse because it uses a plugin called Sidekick, which basically relies on Redis to schedule jobs and
Okay. Should we ever move to Elasticache? Is that, by the way, is the Elasticache, is that just me having written something down off the cuff, or was that part of the production plan?
No, it wasn't part of the production plan. As in, Redis was ideally a part of the production plan.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. Well, I guess, status, or what do we, oh, there's one other item here, and it is about a mail account. I think right now in the sandbox, I think it's using your account. And so mail looks like you're sending a lot of mail.
Mhm.
And so dedicated account. But other than that, status.
The setup is not being started yet, so maybe this week we'll start setting up all these independent stuff. And yeah, basically status is not yet started.
In terms of the subdomain or the DNS with the subdomain discuss, do you envision an update needed for DNS potentially?
You mean development versus production?
Yeah. Well, not exactly. I don't know that we would end up running a development instance. We would probably turn down the sandbox instance and move on, probably.
Mhm.
But
Uh,
a change, yeah.
we can make use of the same elastic IP address that was reserved to point it to the new instance so that we don't need to make any changes in the domain.
Okay. Now, having said that, it might be wise for us to at least have a development or a staging URL handy, or sorry, domain, name entry handy in case we do need to spin something up.
Mhm. We can have a backup zone, basically active passive setup, so that like we don't need a running setup for dedicated for staging is what I mean. Like we can have a, in case something goes wrong, we can like switch it to the passive setup or something.
Do you, okay. Right now, so speaking of HA and availability, and scale, thoughts on what that looks like?
So currently we had planned on doing it on the VM. So when it comes to VM, the scaling needs to be done with intervention. Like it cannot happen automatically. So in that case, scaling is a little bit of challenge. But when it comes to HA setup, we can have a have another VM like basically to which will be a passive setup, which won't have any traffic, and it would basically it will be pointing to the same database, same Redis and everything. It's just that the application would be a different one, and when something goes wrong with the primary application, it can switch it to the other one, so that data and everything are the same.
Yeah, considering that it's running in Docker instances, I wonder if this is time to start to use a cluster so that we can scale a little more horizontally.
I mean, yeah, we can use a cluster, but again, like basically, we don't have anything else, so cluster will be an overkill. But if we are planning on moving in the future, if we are planning on putting more stuff in there, yeah, then we can.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Meshery Cloud could run in there.
Yeah.
But maybe, I guess maybe for the moment, just going with the a single VM, like you were saying. some
Mhm.
amount of, I mean, if you would write down the considerations that we're not making for HA and the considerations that we are making for HA,
Sure.
that'd be good.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. So next week we'll be up in prod.
Yeah. Hopefully, yes.
Yes. Good. Yes. Yeah. Let me know if I don't, you know, from what I could see, it looked like maybe the only thing that was kind of a question is SSL, but the rest, well, at least the rest that we have listed here seems achievable. It seems like there is one issue that we talked about last week, and that is when, as people, if anyone is using or has attempted to use this instance of Discuss today, you'll note that for whatever reason, the site seems incapable of allowing you to upload a PNG or a JPEG. It'll allow you to upload an SVG, but all else seems to fail. So I'm just, here's a PNG. And it's a valid image. Some of the logs have been looked through. I think Josh is the one that was trying to track that down. So that's it's a big issue, actually. It seems small because there's many other features that work, but not that one. It means it's hard to have it as something of a support form because people can't take and share screenshots. So Abhishek, can you maybe list that one down and track down, either open a new issue with Discourse? I don't think Josh put in all of the logs, all of the issues details, because the support people at Discourse said that they hadn't seen that before, and that seems really weird that we would be the only ones to have seen such an error.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, that was Discuss. So we talked last time about Discuss being a little bit of an oddity in that there's only so much to style and rework and do. Some of you have been in there and have helped identify what categories to create, what different styles to do, the header to how to do that, the footer. Austin, can you share a list of your outstanding feedback to Josh? Uh-oh, so I think we lost Austin. Okay, he was tracking a few final items for Josh to take on. Okay, so and then if Austin isn't here for this either, it's kind of an issue. All right, so the next topic is about, so by the way, anyone's welcome to go grab an administrator account on Discuss. It's just a sandbox. You're welcome to play and learn and break things. And we do want to become quite familiar. We do want to, some of you at some point are likely to become community managers or forum managers and moderators. So understanding and playing with these different settings, you'll probably learn a fair bit. Okay. Learn Layer 5. So we have, there's a few folks who are familiar with this. And actually, Nikhil, maybe you'll end up speaking to some of this. That some of you are familiar with the fact that Layer 5 has a number of free resources, a number of resources about service meshes out there. If you go to layer5io/learn, you'll end up seeing kind of three types. So there's a few different books, some of which are from O'Reilly for free, some of which are from O'Reilly that you'd pay for. Like this one is, if you're a subscriber to their platform, you'll see a couple of chapters published early already, which is great. Yash, do you mind, or yeah, is Aditya still on? Yeah, this Aditya or Yash. Oh, this really looks like it's skewed. It must be the aspect ratio. It must be skewed. And so, yeah, so
I,
either,
I-
yeah,
I'll make sure to correct that. Mm.
Aditya, is that, you said you'll check into that one?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. The other thing too, Aditya, that you could probably do is drop in the cover here as well.
Okay. Sure. I'll do that.
Nice. Okay. Okay. Anyway, point is on Learn Layer 5. So today people have, there's books, there are workshops. So we deliver workshops, some with some relative frequency. The workshop material is available for people to self-study. So that's great. And then another thing that is available to everyone is interactive labs. So there's been a number of labs that have been created using O'Reilly's Katacoda. And so people can come here and walk through deploying a service mesh using Meshery. We actually are in need of a number of different labs. So there's basically a getting started with 5 of the meshes, but Meshery actually has 10 adapters. So there's 5 more needed. There are a couple to just that introduce, like running a performance test or interacting with SMI. But Meshery does a lot more than what's listed here. And so there's an open repository of where these interactive labs are. And I believe the name of the repo is Service Mesh Labs. So within here, these are the labs that you find on Katacoda. When these are updated and a PR is merged, then the labs are updated automatically. And so there's a bunch of different labs to create. So if anyone wants to try their hand at creating or updating the existing interactive labs, please do. Like, and if you need an idea as to what lab to create, just let me know. There's a list. Okay. Anyway, that's all of the resources that we give to people today. Tomorrow, quote unquote, we'd consider that there's a need for learning paths, like laying out a learning path for how to secure your infrastructure using a service mesh, for example. And as we lay out that learning path, we want to provide the same content across each of the service meshes. And so there's a design for that information architecture, kind of how those learning paths would be structured. The learning paths themselves, the idea is that they would also be available here, and that, well, let me bring up Figma and show everyone a little bit about what they might look like. We're basically at a point by which it's time to earnestly start the effort, and I think Nikhil in particular has done a couple of prototypes and is getting us well on our way. It's time to break out each of the designs and enable anyone who wants to pick these up to move forward with them. So it's here. If I'll put a link to this in the chat. If you don't have access, then just note that you don't have access and you'll be invited. Figma just got done changing their rules like about a week ago to where they sort of plugged a loophole, I would say, that which has an adverse effect of basically, I think only under their free plan, only a couple of people can edit while everyone else has to view. So, but this is what folks will want to look through. This is, so Nikhil, by the way, it seems like we might be able to move this forward in a couple of phases. One is creating the learning paths that have written content, that have interactive labs, or just written labs for people to walk through. Maybe a quiz at the end of each of those sections. So if there was a learning path for that was focused towards developers, and maybe the topic was securing the mesh, there might be a couple of sections on how to filter traffic and secure secure your service mesh using traffic filtering, another based on MTLS and how that's done across the service meshes. At the end of which, eventually we're going to want to have, let people have a user account, very, very simply have a very light learning management system in which people can register, take their quizzes, get grades, and ultimately receive a certificate that identifies that they're something of a mesh master. In this case, probably not a mesh master per se, but a mesh learner. That would be something much more. We'll probably partner with the Linux Foundation on the creation of, something similar to the Kubernetes certifications that you see. The general manager for that training has asked us a few times to do so. So here's some of the design language for the site, and then wireframes for what it might look like. Now, Austin, I think you're back on now. So it's been decided.
Yes, I'm back on.
Okay, nice. And so, by the way, Samir, if you'll give Nikhil or Austin your email address, they'll get you an invite to this. So how do we get up and going? We hopefully have done final review of these wireframes and the high fidelity mockups. We can start to, assuming that these match with the components that we'll be using from Storybook. So for everyone else's reference, there's a site, an open source site under storybook.js.org/tutorials. This tutorial site, it has some pre-made React components that we'll end up reusing. So this is an open source site, and it will help us build out like the various learning paths and the content and not the content, but the information architecture, like the structure, the bones of how people will navigate and how we'll structure the various sections in the labs, how people nav from chapter to chapter, that kind of a thing. Storybook itself is a piece of technology that we're not looking at using right now. So that's kind of a red herring. What we're looking at using is just their tutorial site and the way they have it structured. So Nikhil, you had recently done a prototype of ingesting this site and having it, integrating it into the Layer5 IO Gatsby site as well. Do you want to walk people through that? Like what that would look like as they were to go to take a given component like this, for example, and have that realized? Like, is there an exercise that we need to do in here that identifies what Storybook component we would use for what component in the mockup?
Well, that is not yet finalized, like which components to be used from Storybook. So initially only the Gatsby Node.js or the structure which they were using to render files based on the file path that was updated. So we have that file structure working currently. And coming to the components, there are multiple components, but we will have to sort them out, whichever we need to use it. So I will take a look by today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and list out the few of the components which we can use from Storybook in the design spec itself. And while others can also take a look, like I think Chinmay is already taking a look for the table of contents that we are going to use for from the Storybook site. So that is one of the components. I guess the most important component is this table of contents itself, because other than that, considering we have a much different design than them, we might not reuse the component. So it depends upon the usability or the design as we propose.
Right. So, Austin, do you want to, have you reworked the wireframes, the mockups here in accordance with what's available on the Storybook tutorials site?
Yes, okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening wherever you are. Yeah. So currently, the only component which doesn't match a storybook is this. The rest look like storybook. The only okay. I will share my screen. Right. So this currently looks like what's on Storybook, but on Storybook it's a bit smaller, and the section is divided into two, and it has a large euro. This, on the other hand, doesn't. It's the only component which doesn't look like what we have on Storybook. But other than that, the rest components and screens we have are all on Storybook, and they match their components very well. So the only thing we'll be needing to change after this review will be this screen entirely into because they don't have, I don't think they have much parts regarding this that could replace this on its own, this screen on its own. So that's just all that doesn't match with the components.
Okay. Here's the thing is we don't have to use the designs that are here. We can like use the Storybook components. Like, have you looked to see how we can reconcile the two? I actually don't understand which one is it that doesn't match up?
This currently,
Which one?
this is the first one that doesn't match up. This matches with one of them, but this section is in which it's used on Storybook is a bit smaller. Like
Okay, when you
this screen.
when you say this, are you saying the whole page?
Yes, like I can show you an example now. This Storybook component, like now you see it's smaller here.
Okay.
Yes, it's divided into 3 grids. While on this section it's divided into 2 grids.
Okay. What can people get started with today? I guess
Okay,
that's the
people get
question.
started with the this screen. This screen is so similar because on Storybook they have 3 layout grids, while we just have 4. So they can get started with this screen immediately. And the sidebar matches Storybook perfectly. This sidebar too for the learning parts in the individual screens, they all match. So they can get started, and this detailed part, learning part, matches perfectly. So they can get started with this. Because if you check it out, yeah, it's exactly the same thing we have.
Okay, let's see if we can do this. For those who are considering working on this site, let's see if we can get a couple of names associated with the components so that each of you are comfortable with grabbing one and trying to replicate it over. So a few things. One, Cynthia, if you'll send your email address to Austin or Nikhil or Chinmay, or we'll make sure that you get in there.
Okay.
But
Yeah, so before we progress, I had few doubts with the design and the structure of how we can have. So, yeah, please you can share the screen with the technology.
okay. Oops. Oh, Zoom's getting my way.
Yeah, So, like the structure that we are gonna have is first we will have the four learning paths, or like initially we have only one. Suppose mastering service mesh for developer. So that would be the home page that we have for that would be this page.
Austin, is that right?
No, sorry, I was sending the invite to
Oh,
since I
okay.
couldn't
So,
quite catch that.
so there's, yeah, I think Austin, there's probably a few questions here. Like one, is there a need for this other nav bar? Like that was
Oh,
a nav bar when we were going to have a subdomain, but now
Yes.
that we're considering that it's in the same domain, that seems odd.
Yeah, I would actually like us to keep the nav bar to some extent because it distinguishes the whole website a bit, the whole project. Because I would know it's part of the Layer 5 project, but having them know that okay, the learn section will be very good. So even if we can keep the logo and maybe the courses and a few things, we can take out the mega menu because that was what we're deliberating on. We can take out
Oh
the
yeah.
mega
Yeah.
menu. Yes.
Yeah. Except, so the thing is that's actually exactly what we're trying not to do, is to not create if we wanted to create a subdomain, we would just be taking the framework of Storybook holistically and putting it into a subdomain in a different repo. And we're trying to integrate the site as much as possible. And so we don't want it to be this is a very clean and nice looking way of telling someone that they're on a subdomain. If they're in the same domain, they would expect to see the same navbar. And so the comments that I've made to have this displaced are, it looks like we haven't done that just yet. So what we're looking for is to use the same navbar, show where we would update the mega menu to include any learn specific navigation, if any. It might just be a link within the site itself, within those pages themselves. They should have their own navigation as needed. So if we need to have navigation back and forth between, learning paths and basically between learning paths and courses. So this being the landing page, and this maps fairly well to the landing page here. So let me stop right there and say, would anyone like to take on grabbing this component and styling it like this? Which, by the way, Austin, if we have a grid this big that more or less looks all the same, it'll be a little bit of a strain on the visitor to understand, like to train their eyes to go to one area versus the next. Is there a structure to how this is going to be presented and categorized? Are these going to be presented or colorized based on service mesh? Maybe not, right? Maybe colorized based on learning path.
That's a great idea, Lee, because I'm also considering that now. Maybe that would be a great idea. Maybe we'll have to set out color pads, just like what Storybook has, maybe green, but still sticking to the brand colors. How about that? That will most likely be more perfect and give a better user experience and give them less give us less information to consume.
Okay. Okay. In the meantime, for someone to take one of these, maybe even just as it is, take one of these as it is, and begin to work toward incorporating that. Nikhil, mechanically, like I know that Nikhil, you have a few other unanswered questions, but just to unlock some of the people that are on the call, between Lizette and Blossom and Chinmay and others that may not be actively working on other areas. Is that feasible, Nikhil, for them to take this particular component?
Yes, I think that's fine.
Okay. So because I want to try to make this, we've been talking about the project for a while. It's a big project and people are interested, and hopefully everyone will learn something as we go and be proud of, you know, what comes forth. And I was hoping today we can unlock the project a bit. Like Nikhil did a prototype recently, and based on the success of the prototype, I think it's time to start. Maybe just in a couple of areas. It sounds like this is maybe the first one. And does anyone want to tackle this? Does anyone want to try to do that? Move over that component from Storybook? And it can't be Aditya.
So one thing is, if no one is ready to take, I'm ready to take up any component which can be needed, because I'm actually engaged to bring up work on this side, so not an issue to work on any of the components.
Nice. Good. Just before Nikhil takes that one, Nikhil, that's beautiful. And I'm totally counting on that. Gaurav, I'm eyeballing you and thinking of Mesher UI, eyeballing you in the best of ways. So I want to talk to you about that, but which means Aditya, like you have a mesh map tattoo on your forehead, which makes me not be able to see anything but mesh map when I look at you. And Gaurav, maybe there's a nice. It's a pretty tattoo though. It's like a cool nerd tattoo is what I'm thinking. Gaurav, I don't know. They're starting to form kind of this two-toned green logo. It kind of looks like the Meshery logo. I'm sort of seeing you through the lens of that, potentially some things to do in Meshery UI. So before suggesting that you might volunteer here, let's see if Meshery UI is a good fit, because I think you might make some waves based on the PRs that I've seen you land already. So
Yeah, sure.
Which is mostly to say it looks like you have some muscles on those on your shoulders. So maybe some of the Meshery UI work you might be able to lift, which is nice. That's not to say that other people don't have muscles on the call. That's not what I was trying to say. But the rest of us that don't have muscles, apparently, including me, Yash, Elizabeth, Cynthia, Chinmay, Blossom. Chinmay, I know you're already doing some things here as we're congealing on both on the components and some on the design. I think there's a lot more to be done on the design, actually. But at least on moving over a couple of components. Chinmay, do you want to take this first component here, this grid, this card?
Yes, sir. Sir, I'll open a new, sir, can our team can open new issues for the components which can be started off, so others can also comment on the issues and can be started off.
That would be great. Yeah, if you would, that would be wonderful.
Okay, yes, sir. I'll do it.
Yeah, and you might, if you might only do it for a handful or the ones that we talk about right now, just because I think some of these are going to change a little bit.
Okay, sir.
But
I'll
yeah, that's
discuss it with our team.
Good deal. All right, so then that brings us over to Blossom, Cynthia, Lizette, Yash. So
yeah, I'm with you. What might work on the components alongside Chimney. I think that's the taking. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, mostly, which is to say that you said you would like to work on the components alongside Chinmay, I think.
So, there was another company that go. Since I am junior already,
All right, I'm going to put a bunch of words in your mouth because I heard scope and junior.
no.
Oh. Okay.
I think I should type. I think my mouthpiece is bad.
Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you.
Yes, I did say that. Is there another component designed ready for development? Since Chimney is already working on the card component you just mentioned.
Beautiful. Here we go. Here's one. And this is.
Yeah, it's a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep. That's a great. I understand now that what you're saying is yes, and is there a component that you might pick up? I think the answer is yes. Here's a suggestion: is this particular component, which lets people sort of, when they're in a course, it lets them go from the next section to the next section to the next section. This directly maps to, well, when we get in here, I think you've probably seen it. Actually, it's kind of interesting. When you go into a course in this tutorial site, they have, this is their table of contents. It has 9 sections going from introduction, architecture, build, review to conclusion. So when you go in and you're looking at all the content, it's like introduction, architecture, build, review, conclusion. It's the same 9. So this component here, this would be a wonderful one to pick up and move over here. If that sounds okay, maybe we'll, Chinmay will help us get an issue opened and get your name on it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The learn section is currently on layer5.io.
Yeah.
Yes. For the navigations in the design, some of the navigations are going to be different from.
Yep. Some of the navigation will be different for the learning paths.
Yeah.
And so some of that would be like, let's say that this was a learning path right here, this book. So when someone went to go look at that learning path, yeah, they would have a navigator on the side so that they could step through each sections of that course.
All right. The navigation will be a side nav bar, not top one. It will replace the current top one.
Right. Yeah, I had asked for this one to be removed a while ago because this is for our subdomain.
Yeah, that was actually what confused me.
So that's a great question. That's actually, it's not just that there's a side nav bar. We probably also do need a, potentially something like this jump to section or a cookie crumb trail or something. And this is why I'm saying, I think Austin has to snap to and focus here to help rework the design so that it becomes clear what those secondary navigations are. So this is one for sure, this side one. But is there, do we want a different navigator? One of the things that this is an intriguing thing for us to think about, and it's the fact that, and I know we're about 4 minutes over, so we'll try to wrap here shortly. And that is that when we look at this site, the way that it's laid out is such that it's kind of just, it's sort of like 2 layers, 2 pieces, so they have a tutorial and that's one layer, one construct. And then they have chapters. So within a given tutorial, there are 10 chapters here. And that's about as deep as it goes. Like it's just a 2-layer hierarchy of a structured thing. Now, what's interesting is that there's a third vector, there's a way of kind of rotating the content on its side, if you will, which is to say that these 10 chapters, this tutorial, it's available in React, Vue.js, AngularJS, React Native. So you can take the same tutorial in different frameworks. So you can go through how to use, do this tutorial using React, and it's got 9 chapters, or you can switch to Angular and go through the same 9 chapters, but it's Angular examples, not React. Great. So as we move this over, ours would be like, hey, if the example was, here's securing a service mesh, and maybe it's using MTLS, using traffic filters, whatever those specific steps are. But and the way that we will rotate and kind of look at the same learning path from different viewpoints is based on the type of service mesh. So maybe one is with Istio, another one is with console, another one is with Linkerd, and we kind of keep going. And so that's how this information architecture fits for us. And it may not, like, okay, so why are you, I'm saying this in part just for all of us to get familiar and comfortable with how these are mapping. I think but I'm also saying it because like this is in part one of the ways in which people navigate the site. Like conceptually, if you're here to learn under the context of Vue.js, well, you sort of choose it once and then you nav the rest of the course content here. You don't have to, like, it's sort of like a filter, but that is a way of navigating the site some. And so as we collectively think about different ways of navigating, like if there's a cookie crumb trail at the top, or if there's navigator on the left, and if you can go all the way back, okay, and then how do I switch between whether I want to study Istio or I want to study console? Where's that filter set? Like I don't think I see that in the designs today. I don't think. That might be where we've, there are some good, nice elements to this site, like, or I'm sorry, to the design, like jumping into discuss. So if there's a discuss category for console, like for that service mesh, and that's what you're studying here, and it's like, oh, actually, I don't really get this. How does console do such and such? Well, if this was a deep link, it doesn't have to be very deep, but if this was a quote unquote deep link from the console learning path, the console content here to that category, assuming that there's a category here, they would get linked into that particular topic or that category. And that's, it's not the slickest feature, but it feels good. They feel integrated. That's something to, another way of like tying the sites in. So, okay, so I think we got Chinmay, Blossom, sort of Nikhil, seeking you out as an individual to try to provide a mapping between the components that are here and the components in the storybook. Seeking you out as an individual to lay out part of the initial framework. So Nikhil, I think you have an open PR for creating Layer5 IO/learn/ng, because we're going to ultimately want to augment the current learn page, which Austin is another kind of a miss on the design, is there needs to be a section that calls out learning paths here. And so what does that look like versus the dedicated homepage that you have? That's another design to do. Okay, anyway, so as we go to wrap up, did anyone else want to take on an assignment right now? or do folks want to give it a few days before picking one up?
So before we wrap up, just ask two quick questions. One is, shall I update the PR to keep the path, Learn-NG, to keep going with the development of the Learn site?
And Nikhil, you said, should you say it again?
Yeah, so in the current PR, I'm actually adding a Navbar component, but since I think we would be reusing the Navbar component, so I will be removing that code. So I was asking that if I should keep that learn-ng path, so that if we progress towards the site, we keep going on the development which would potentially be learn, but for the time we can keep that as learn-ng to get ready with the home page and the stuff.
I think that makes sense to me, because then we don't have to keep all the work in a separate branch. You can actually merge the work to master and actually have it published and available for all of us to look at. It won't be linked to, so conceptually people won't be visiting it while it's in progress. But that might be, and then in the end, we would just end up switching out the learn-ng for learn. And
Yeah, that's as simple as that. It would only require a few word changes in the cat node.js file, and we would be good.
Nice. Okay. That makes sense.
So other question being that we have learning paths, but we also have courses. Okay. So will there be a courses grid inside the learning path grid, or will there be only be a courses nav bar, like in the sidebar inside a learning path?
Yeah. I guess we technically have like 3 layers here: a learning path, a course, and a section. And then we have the same course for different service meshes. So Nikhil, is that, I'm assuming that's feasible with, to create that type of hierarchy?
Yeah, it's feasible to create the hierarchy. Just the thing is, what should be the? I think I know the design is still in progress, but should we be displaying the courses individually as a card or a grid, or will it only be under the sidebar within a drop down itself?
Probably the latter. Probably we would only display the learning path as a grid, because conceptually there will be quite a few courses, a number of courses rolled up underneath the learning path. So I mean, what isn't, maybe what this doesn't show is that this might happen 3 times over. So there's a course, and the learning path overall is quite large. And so we would only have like 3 of them, 4 of them. 3 of them potentially, like if you're a developer, here's your learning path to service mesh. If you're an operator, if you're a product manager, something like that.
Okay. I'll create few dummy files and add it to the site, so that when Blossom and Chinmay work with the 2 components, they will get that data to work with it.
Okay, nice. Okay. Anything else from anybody very briefly, because we're way over time. I guess I'll say, if you wanted to pick up a component and your name isn't on one, or you didn't talk about it just yet, then message in the Slack, or jump into the Figma design, make a comment, like put your name in there, ask if that's one that you can pick up, and let's do it. Okay, nice. Good. So Elizabeth is probably tracking toward this, wrapping up some other work, but then headed on in here. Okay. Nice. Well, good. All right. So Samir and Gaurav, you guys are on my list. So I want to come chat with you guys when you got some time. So
Sure.
Nice to have you guys today. I apologize that we went way over. So, but I'm excited about the Learn site. It'll be a lot higher quality than what I've seen on some other sites. So, okay.
Expecting.
All right. Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.